Lieutenant Elias Ward's boots scraped against the metallic floor as two guards pushed him forward. His arms were bound behind his back, the cold cuffs cutting into his wrists, but he kept his head high. He would not give the aliens the satisfaction of seeing fear in his eyes. The room he was forced into was wide and circular, with dark walls that pulsed with faint blue light. Strange symbols glowed across the floor, and at the far end sat Vorak, the warlord of the Dravari Syndicate. His 6 insect-like eyes blinked one after the other as his mandibles twisted into what might have been a smile. "Human," Vorak said in a deep, clicking voice, translated through a rough speaker. "You have been captured and your fleet has been driven back. Your life means nothing, but today you will entertain me." Elias stood silently, refusing to answer. He could taste iron in his mouth from a cut on his lip, but he didn't wipe it. The doors behind him opened again and 2 more guards entered. Elias's heart stopped for a moment. Between them were 2 women, Mira and Tessa, his sisters. Mira's dark hair was messy, her face pale but calm. She walked with quiet dignity despite her hands being tied. Tessa, on the other hand, fought against the guards with every step, her fiery red hair falling into her face as she shouted, "Get your claws off me!" "Mira, Tessa," Elias whispered, almost too softly to hear. Vorak rose from his seat and spread his clawed hands. "2 females of your kind. Your blood. Your family. The choice is simple, human. Pick one to live. The other will die. Choose now." The words hit Elias like a physical blow. His mind reeled. He wanted to rush forward to shield them both, but the guards aimed their long weapons at him, and Vorak's cruel eyes glittered with amusement. "You're insane," Elias said finally, his voice cold. "I won't play your game." Vorak's laugh was a low rumbling sound. "You will. Every creature breaks, human. Some beg, some scream, some try to be brave. You will be the last kind. I enjoy the last kind." The guards shoved Mira and Tessa to their knees. Tessa glared at the warlord. "You coward. Fight my brother if you dare." Mira spoke softly, her voice steady. "Elias, don't let him see you panic. We're together. Whatever happens, we're together." Her words were like a blade in Elias's chest. He looked at both of them, his mind racing. Tessa, the bold and reckless one, always ready to fight. Mira, the gentle heart of their family, always keeping the peace. How could he choose? "You have 1 minute," Vorak said, lowering himself back into his seat. "Choose or I kill both." Elias's fists clenched. He could hear the seconds ticking away in his head, though there was no clock. He thought about the battles he had fought, the men he had lost under his command, the promises he had made to bring his sisters home safely. "No," he said at last, his voice like steel. "You don't get to decide who lives and who dies. Not today." Vorak tilted his head, studying him. So brave, so foolish. "Take him away," he ordered his guards. "Let him think. Tomorrow he chooses." Elias was dragged backward toward the door. Tessa shouted after him, her voice full of anger and fear. "Elias, don't let them win." Mira simply held his gaze, her calm eyes giving him strength. The door shut, leaving Elias in darkness. He was thrown into a cell, the metal walls humming softly with energy. He sat on the cold floor, breathing hard, his heart pounding in his chest. He had faced death before, but this was different. This was not about him. This was about his family. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to think. Vorak wanted him to break. Vorak wanted him to beg. "No," Elias whispered to himself. "I'll find a way. I won't lose them both." Outside his cell, he heard alien voices clicking and hissing. Guards laughed in their strange language, probably betting on what he would do tomorrow. Elias stared at the glowing ceiling and made himself a silent promise. He would not choose. He would not let the Dravari decide the fate of his sisters. Somehow he would find a third option. Elias did not sleep that night. He sat in the corner of the cold cell, his mind running in circles. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Mira's calm face and Tessa's defiant glare. Vorak wanted to break him, wanted to make him choose, but Elias knew he couldn't do that. If he chose one sister over the other, he would never forgive himself. Hours passed. The faint blue lights of the corridor outside shifted, signaling a new cycle. Elias stood when the guards came. They dragged him from the cell and forced him into a smaller chamber with a screen on the wall. The screen lit up, showing Mira sitting in another room. Her hands were tied, but her posture was straight. Her voice came through a crackling speaker. "Elias," she said softly, "don't let them crush you. Whatever happens, remember who you are." Then the screen switched to Tessa. She was pacing like a caged animal, her red hair falling over her face. "This is their game," she shouted. "Don't let them win, Eli. Find a way out." The screen went dark. Elias's chest ached, but he stayed silent. The guards pushed him back to his cell. He knew what Vorak was doing, trying to fill his head with guilt to make him desperate. Later, Vorak himself came to see him. The warlord stood tall in the doorway, his alien armor glinting under the lights. "You are quiet, human," Vorak said. "Most of your kind cry and beg by now." Elias met his gaze without flinching. "I told you yesterday, and I'm not playing your game." Vorak's mandibles curved in amusement. "Every creature plays. You think you are strong, but soon your silence will turn to screams. The clock is still ticking." He turned and left, leaving Elias alone with his thoughts. When the footsteps faded, Elias sat back down on the floor. His heart was beating fast, but not from fear, from focus. He began to think like a soldier, not a prisoner. He had noticed something during Vorak's visit. The guard near the door carried a device that clicked every few seconds. It seemed to control the energy barrier of the cell. Elias had also noticed that the guard spoke in short, sharp words, not enough for the translator to pick up. If he could learn their language even a little, maybe he could find a weakness. That night he acted. When the guards brought him food, he pretended to stumble and fall, letting the tray slide across the floor. One guard cursed in his alien tongue, speaking longer than usual. Elias pretended not to notice, but his implant, a small military device in his jawbone, recorded the sounds. It was a standard issue for officers, meant for gathering field intel. Now it was his only weapon. For hours he lay in the dark, replaying the sounds in his mind. His implant translated only fragments, but it was enough to pick out words. Open, locked, patrol. The next day, Vorak tried something new. Elias was taken to the main chamber again. This time Mira and Tessa were there too, standing just a few meters away. "You have delayed too long," Vorak said, his voice low and dangerous. "Perhaps a demonstration will help you decide." He raised one clawed hand and a guard stepped forward, weapon ready, aimed at Mira. Elias's heart slammed in his chest. "No," he shouted, stepping forward. Vorak's eyes glittered. "Then choose. Speak one name. Say it and the other will live." The room was silent except for the hum of the lights. Elias's breathing was heavy, but his mind was clear. If he gave in now, it would be over. Vorak would win. Slowly, Elias straightened. "No," he said firmly. "You won't get what you want from me." For a moment, no one moved. Then Vorak lowered his hand and gave a low, amused sound. "Interesting," he said. "Very well. We wait one more cycle, but tomorrow, there will be no mercy." The guards dragged Elias back to his cell. This time he didn't feel hopeless. Vorak's hesitation had told him something important. The warlord didn't just want a dead human. He wanted Elias broken. That meant Elias still had time. As soon as the guards left, Elias activated his implant again, refining the recordings, learning more words. Every second counted now. He whispered to himself as he worked, his jaw set with determination. "I'm not going to choose between them. There has to be a way out. There's always a way out." Outside the cell, the alien voices echoed faintly, unaware that the human prisoner was already turning the tables in his mind. The next cycle began with the same routine: guards checking the cells, the distant hum of alien engines, and the cold silence of the prison corridors. But this time Elias felt different. He had a plan forming in his mind. He spent the morning lying still, pretending to be weak and hopeless. When a guard finally approached to drop off food, Elias made his move. He staggered forward and collapsed near the barrier. "Water," he croaked. The guard clicked his mandibles and muttered something in his language. Elias caught a new word and stored it in his implant. The guard bent down slightly, curious if the human was finally breaking. Elias used that moment to speak softly. "You talk too much," he whispered in English. The guard tilted his head, confused, and backed away. But Elias was smiling now. Every word he heard was another piece of the puzzle. When the guard left, Elias sat up and activated the implant again. It replayed the sounds in a slow loop, breaking them into pieces. He was beginning to recognize patterns, commands, and control codes. By the end of the cycle, Elias had something usable. A simple phrase, "Open security gate." He tested it quietly, whispering into the empty cell. Nothing happened, of course. The system only listened to their voices. But if he could mimic their sounds closely enough. Hours later, Vorak returned. This time the warlord did not sit. He stood tall and imposing, his dark armor catching the light. "You have one final chance, human," Vorak said. "Tomorrow we end this. Choose one sister to live or watch both die. That is the law." Elias said nothing. His silence seemed to amuse Vorak even more. "You are interesting," Vorak said at last. "Perhaps you are worth keeping alive after all. We will see." He left and the guards once again locked the cell. Elias exhaled slowly. Vorak thought he was still trapped. That was good. That night, Elias worked faster. He used the implant to generate the alien words, repeating them until they sounded right. His throat ached from whispering in the strange tongue, but he kept going until his voice was perfect. Then came the risk. When the next guard passed, Elias spoke the words in a low, commanding tone. The guard froze, startled. The barrier flickered for half a second, as if confused. Then it reactivated. Elias grinned. "It works," he whispered to himself. "I just need one more chance." The next step was contacting his people. The UHS Resolute was out there somewhere, hiding beyond the system's edge. They had retreated when Elias was captured, but he knew they wouldn't have left completely. He opened the implant's secondary function, a short-range signal transmitter. It was meant for emergencies with very limited power, but Elias hoped it was enough. He tapped in the data he had collected, the layout of the prison, guard schedules, power nodes. Then he added a single line, "Wait for signal. Strike when you see the breach." The transmitter hummed softly, sending the message into the void. When he finished, Elias lay back against the wall and closed his eyes. He had done all he could. Now he had to wait. The next day came faster than he expected. Elias was dragged from his cell, his arms bound. He was brought back to the same chamber as before. Mira and Tessa were there again. Mira's face was calm, but Elias could see fear in her eyes. Tessa was struggling against her bonds, shouting, "You better have a plan, Eli." Elias gave her the smallest nod. Vorak stood at the center of the room. "The time has come," he said. "Choose one. The other dies now." The guards raised their weapons, aiming at both sisters. The air was tense. Elias took a deep breath. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "I choose," he began, then suddenly shouted in the Dravari language, "Open security gate." The room froze for a heartbeat. Then the floor panels lit up red, alarms blaring. The energy fields around the doors flickered and dropped. Before the guards could react, Elias lunged forward, tackling one and knocking the weapon from his hands. Tessa kicked another guard in the chest, sending him crashing backward. "Mira, run!" Elias shouted, grabbing the weapon and firing a stun blast at the nearest control panel. The entire chamber shook as explosions rumbled through the complex. Somewhere outside, heavy gunfire echoed. The Resolute had received his message and was attacking. For the first time since his capture, Elias felt hope. "Stay close," he told his sisters, pulling them toward the exit. "This isn't over yet." The alarms blared louder as Elias, Mira, and Tessa ran through the alien corridors. Red emergency lights flashed across the walls, casting long shadows that twisted and moved like predators. Behind them, the Dravari guards scrambled, shouting in their sharp, clicking language. Elias's heart raced, but his mind was sharp. Every corner, every panel, every detail of the prison he had memorized in the past cycles was now his guide. He led his sisters past locked doors, down narrow passages, and around security cameras, using the alien words he had learned to avoid traps. "Eli, are you sure this is the right way?" Mira asked, her voice steady, though her eyes darted around nervously. "Yes," Elias said, firing a small stun blast at a security panel. The door slid open with a hiss. "Trust me." "Keep moving," Tessa grinned, her fiery spirit undimmed. "Finally. I thought you'd just let them kill us for fun. Focus." Elias snapped, but there was a hint of a smile. He was glad to see her fighting spirit intact. It reminded him why humans could endure so much: heart, courage, and cleverness. As they turned a corner, a patrol of Dravari soldiers appeared, blocking the exit. They raised their weapons in unison. "Go!" Elias shouted. He grabbed Mira's hand and shoved Tessa forward. Then he hurled a stun grenade at the guard's feet. The blast sent sparks into the air and dazed the aliens long enough for the sisters to slip past. Elias fought his way through, using every tactic he had learned in training. He dodged energy blasts, rolled behind cover, and knocked guards aside. Even though they were stronger and faster than him, he knew their movements were predictable. They underestimated humans. They reached a massive chamber, the ceiling high and filled with intricate machinery. In the center was a landing bay, and Elias could see the flicker of the UHS Resolute's assault drones above, dropping explosives on the compound. "There," Elias pointed. "We can reach the hangar and get out." But the path was blocked by Vorik himself. The warlord's many eyes glimmered with rage. He raised a claw and energy surged, forming a wall of light that separated Elias from the hangar. "You are persistent, human," Vorik said, his voice a deep rumble. "But persistence cannot save you. You cannot escape." Elias stared at him, breathing hard. Every instinct screamed to fight, but he had no weapons strong enough to match Vorik directly. He looked at his sisters. Mira's calm strength and Tessa's fierce determination gave him an idea. "Move," he shouted, and he and Tessa pushed a large control console toward the energy wall. Sparks flew as it collided with the barrier. The wall flickered but held. Vorik growled, advancing toward them. His 6 legs moved with terrifying speed. Mira's hand touched a panel on the wall. "Eli, I can override the door controls." "Cover me!" Elias and Tessa held off the guards while Mira typed frantically. She had learned enough of the alien systems during their captivity to manipulate the bay doors. With a final command, the massive doors opened with a grinding roar. "Go, go, go!" Elias yelled. The sisters sprinted through the opening and into the hangar. Elias followed, covering them as drones and Marines from the Resolute began their assault on the remaining aliens. Explosions rocked the building, sending pieces of metal flying. Vorik lunged at Elias, his claws cutting through the air. Elias dodged, rolled, and fired his weapon at the support beams above. A section of the ceiling collapsed, forcing Vorik to retreat temporarily. Finally, they reached a small escape shuttle, its engines humming softly. Elias slammed the door shut behind them. Tessa hit the launch controls and the shuttle lifted off just as the Resolute fired into the compound. Through the viewport, they saw the destruction, explosions, fires, and alien reinforcements retreating. Vorik stood at the edge of a platform glaring at them, his form silhouetted against the burning building. "He won't forget this," Mira said quietly. "No," Elias replied. His jaw set, "And neither will we. But we survived. Together." The shuttle climbed into space, docking with the Resolute. As they stepped aboard, human officers rushed to them, checking for injuries. Elias looked at his sisters, relief flooding his chest. They were alive, both of them unbroken. In the control room, Elias watched as the human fleet prepared to strike back at the Dravari Syndicate using the intel he had gathered. "We have a chance now," he said softly. Tessa punched his shoulder lightly. "We'd better make them pay for thinking they could control us." Mira smiled, placing a hand on Elias's arm. "You made the impossible choice, Eli. You didn't choose one of us over the other. You chose all of us, humanity, family, and courage." Elias looked out at the stars, the lights of the Resolute reflecting in his eyes. The battle was not over. Vorik would return. The Dravari would strike again. But for the first time in days, Elias felt hope. Humans were clever, adaptable, and unbreakable. And he, with his sisters beside him, would face whatever came next. Together. The shuttle docked with the UHS Resolute, and the sisters stepped out, still catching their breath. Elias followed, his body aching but his mind sharper than ever. The crew crowded around them, checking for injuries and offering water and medical attention. "Are you both all right?" a commander asked, her eyes wide with concern. Mira nodded, her calm face betraying only a hint of exhaustion. "Yes, thanks to him." She looked at Elias. Elias didn't hesitate. "He kept us alive." Tessa, ever bold, slapped Elias on the back. "I told you, brother, you better have a plan." "And you did." Her grin was fierce, full of energy, even after the ordeal. Elias allowed himself a small smile. "We're not out of danger yet. Vorik will strike back. We need to act before he regroups." In the Resolute's command center, Elias connected his implant to the main computer. Every piece of information he had collected during captivity, layouts, guard schedules, energy nodes, was uploaded instantly. The fleet's commanders leaned over the displays, eyes wide. "This is incredible," said the fleet admiral. "With this intel, we can strike at the heart of the Syndicate's operations. We can save thousands of lives," Elias nodded. "We have to move quickly. Vorak won't wait. He's smart, but he underestimates human. Our courage, our adaptability, our unity. That's our advantage." Outside the viewport, the fleet moved in formation, a wave of human ships ready to take the fight to the Dravari. The Resolute fired a series of tracking beacons into the Syndicate's main base, guiding the fleet to weak points Elias had discovered. Back on the bridge, Tessa leaned over the console. "You really pulled it off, Elias. I thought we'd never get out." Mira placed a hand on Tessa's shoulder. "We survived because he didn't play their game. He found a way that no alien expected." Elias's eyes were fixed on the stars, imagining the enemy fleet ahead. "It's not just about fighting with weapons. It's about strategy, courage, and willpower. Vorak thinks his numbers and strength matter most. But humans, we fight with our hearts, and we don't give up." The fleet jumped into the Syndicate system. Explosions lit up the darkness as human forces struck with precision, hitting energy nodes, disabling defenses, and freeing prisoners. Elias watched, his pulse steady. Every strike was a reminder of what humans could do when united. In the main Syndicate chamber, Vorak roared as alarms blared. "Impossible," he hissed. "How can these humans fight so cleverly?" His 6 eyes glared at the monitors showing the fleet's advance. "Find the human responsible. I want him." Vorak's soldiers scrambled, but the damage was already done. Critical systems failed, and their forces began to retreat in disarray. Back aboard the Resolute, Elias turned to his sisters. "This is why we survive. Not because we are stronger, but because we are willing to think, to act, and to never give up on each other." Mira smiled softly. "You've reminded me why humans are special, Elias. Not our ships, not our weapons, our courage." Tessa crossed her arms, grinning. "Next time, maybe I get to punch the alien first." "Just saying." Elias chuckled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. They had survived the impossible, outsmarted a warlord, and proven that humans could face any challenge. As the Resolute moved out of the system, Elias stood by the viewport, staring at the stars. Vorak would return, and the Dravari might strike again someday, but humanity had answered the challenge, clever, brave, and unbroken. The crew began planning the next phase, rebuilding, rescuing, and striking at the remaining Syndicate forces. Elias and his sisters would continue to lead, their bond unshakable. Elias thought of the moment in the alien chamber when Vorak demanded the impossible choice. He had refused to choose. He had trusted his mind, his heart, and the strength of his family, and it had worked. "Humanity isn't about numbers," he whispered to himself. "It's about hope, courage, and the will to survive together." Mira placed a hand on his arm. "We survived because of you," she said. "No," Elias replied, shaking his head. "We survived because we never gave up on each other. That's what makes us human. That's why we can face anything, even the impossible." The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, and for the first time in days, Elias allowed himself to feel the peace of victory. Humanity had won, not just by fighting, but by proving that cleverness, heart, and courage could overcome even the most impossible challenges. And somewhere in the darkness of space, Vorak seethed, knowing he had underestimated the human spirit, the one thing he could never control. Elias, Mira, and Tessa stood together looking out at the stars, ready for whatever challenges the universe would send next. One thing was certain: humans would always fight and they would never give up.